The world often feels as though it is standing on the edge of a jagged precipice, staring into a vast, nameless abyss. In the quiet, sun-drenched corners of the Bulgarian mountains decades ago, a woman lived who claimed she could see exactly what lay at the bottom of that dark void. Her name was Vangelia Pandeva Gushtarova, but to the millions who whisper her name in fear and awe, she is simply Baba Vanga. She was a woman who lived a life of profound physical darkness, yet she claimed to possess a light that could pierce through the very fabric of time itself. To understand why people across the globe are currently looking toward the year 2026 with a sense of mounting dread, we must first understand the woman who turned silence into a haunting symphony of warnings. It began with a literal storm, a violent manifestation of nature's raw power that would forever alter the course of her human journey. As a young girl, Vangelia was caught in the path of a terrifying tornado, a force of wind so immense it lifted her body off the ground and cast her into a distant field. When she was finally discovered, her eyes were caked with thick layers of dust and sand. The physical world was snatched away from her in that instant, leaving her in a permanent state of blindness. Yet, as the external world faded into shadow, another realm supposedly opened within the theater of her mind. She described it as an inner eye, a gift granted by the same forces that took her sight, allowing her to perceive events that were not yet written. Today, that inner eye is focused on a date that is rapidly approaching through the fog of the future. In the digital corridors of the internet, the year 2026 is being spoken of as a critical flashpoint. It is not just another numerical marker on the calendar. It is described as the terrifying moment the first match is struck in a global conflagration. Before we continue exploring these chilling visions and the evidence behind them, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The rumors suggest that 2026 marks the beginning of the end for the world as we currently know it, a time when the friction of our modern existence finally ignites into the fire of World War III, changing the landscape of humanity forever in ways we cannot yet imagine. There is a specific kind of heavy silence that precedes a storm, an expectant air that makes the hair on your arms stand up. As you look at the news today, do you feel that same atmospheric tension? The headlines are filled with talk of shifting borders and the steady drums of conflict. To many, these aren't just temporary geopolitical shifts. They are the slow-motion realization of Vanga's ancient script. Her followers point to her staggering accuracy rate, allegedly reaching as high as 85%, as definitive proof that she was no mere teller of tales. They see her words as a map of a future we are already walking into, step by cautious step. Why does the testimony of a blind woman from a small village carry such weight in the modern age? Perhaps it is because our modern world feels increasingly fragile beneath its polished surface. We live in cities constructed of glass and steel in New York, London, and Moscow, monuments to human ingenuity that seem indestructible. Yet in Vanga's haunting visions, these metropolises are mere silhouettes against a rising, unstoppable fire. She spoke of the fall of modern empires with the same casual certainty that one might use to describe the simple setting of the sun. The core question remains, could a woman from a humble background truly perceive the collapse of civilizations before they were even built? Imagine the bustling streets of these cities. Then imagine them silenced by the very prophecies we are about to explore further. Baba Vanga's legacy is not built on vague platitudes, but on the chilling resonance of events that have already passed into the history books. To understand the weight of her 2026 warning, one must look at the moments when her inner eye seemed to peer through the veil of time with terrifying clarity. Before the year 2000, she spoke of a place called Kursk being covered by water, an event that would cause the whole world to weep. At the time, skeptics pointed to the Russian city, mocking the idea of a landlocked city drowning. Yet, when the nuclear submarine Kursk sank to the bottom of the Barents Sea, her words were suddenly transformed from nonsense into a haunting eulogy. Then came the year 2001. She had spoken of American brethren falling after being attacked by steel birds. When the towers fell in New York, the world remembered the blind woman, and the skepticism began to turn into a profound, lingering unease. This historical accuracy acts as the foundation for the dread surrounding her timeline for 2026. Followers who studied her transcripts claim Vanga predicted that a massive conflict would erupt in Europe during this specific year. She didn't describe it in the clinical terms of modern political science, but rather as a great war that would change the very face of the continent. As we look at the current geopolitical landscape, the parallels are impossible to ignore. Eastern Europe is already a tinderbox, with old rivalries being reignited and borders becoming the front lines of a struggle that feels increasingly global. The regional skirmishes we see today in the news are viewed by many as the preliminary tremors before the massive earthquake she predicted for 2026. The shift from localized fighting to World War III is no longer a dystopian plot, but a scenario that global leaders are quietly gaming out in their war rooms. Vanga's envisioned war might involve more than just steel. In the context of 2026, we must consider how her descriptions of unseen weapons and wastelands translate to our high-tech reality. We live in an age where the most devastating attacks might not come from a bomber, but from a keyboard. Cyber warfare, capable of dismantling power grids and plunging entire nations into darkness, fits the profile of the invisible forces she described. Furthermore, her mentions of strange, new diseases that would ravage the population take on a darker tone in an era where biological threats are a constant concern for global security. It is as if she saw the symptoms of a dying civilization, where the tools of our own progress become the instruments of our destruction. The year 2026 represents the point where these modern anxieties and her ancient visions finally converge. Woven into this narrative of global war is her specific mention of a Great Islamic War, a conflict of ideologies and faith that would peak during this period. She spoke of a struggle that would draw in the Middle East and clash violently with the established order of the West. Today, as we witness deepening religious and cultural polarizations, her words feel like a commentary on our current social fractures. This isn't just about territory, it's about the very soul of the human collective. The gravity of these warnings is further amplified by the persistent rumors that world leaders from the Kremlin to the corridors of European power secretly consulted her during her life. They didn't seek her out for comfort, but for the strategic advantage that her foresight might provide. As we stand on the threshold of this predicted era, the sensation that the clock is ticking is palpable. We see the first dominoes falling in the form of fractured supply chains, extreme political polarization, and the slow erosion of international cooperation. These aren't just isolated problems, they are the cracks appearing in the dam before it breaks. The year 2026 is no longer a distant point on a map of time, but a destination we are rapidly approaching. Every headline about a new regional conflict or a technological breakthrough feels like a footstep toward the world Vanga described. We are currently navigating the preparatory stages of her prophecy, where the heavy silence before the storm is filled with the weight of a future she saw long before we were even born. Transitioning from the grand movements of history to the quiet reality of your own life requires a difficult mental adjustment. When we speak of global cataclysms, it feels like a story about someone else. Yet, if Baba Vanga's timeline is accurate, 2026 is not abstract, but a personal destination. How do you prepare for an uncertain future written by forces beyond your control? It is easy to feel small, a leaf in a hurricane of geopolitical shifts. The weight of her predictions often leaves us with fatalism, but true preparation lies in awareness. It is about acknowledging that our stability is fragile, and the inner eye she possessed is something we must all cultivate to navigate the upcoming shadows in the fabric of time. In our age of logic, scientific skepticism naturally clashes with the mystic intuition of a blind prophetess. Rationalists argue her predictions are vague statements onto which we project current anxieties. They suggest we count hits and ignore misses. Yet, there is a nagging sensation logic cannot explain. Perhaps there is a reason why her voice continues to echo through the modern corridors of power. When the world feels chaotic, intuition speaks louder than a spreadsheet. We are trapped between two worlds, one demanding empirical evidence and another feeling the vibration of the approaching storm. Does our knowledge of the prophecy act as a self-fulfilling mechanism, or are we observing the inevitable unfolding of a script? If the path is already written, can we change the ink? If she saw the fire of 2026, is it an unavoidable collision between human nature and destiny? Or was her gift a lighthouse, warning history to change course? Many believe her message was never about doom, but about a moral awakening. They suggest the wastelands she saw were the internal state of a humanity that has lost its way. If we are players on a predestined stage, 2026 is a curtain call. But if there is room for free will, every decision becomes a revolutionary act of defiance against a dark fate. As we approach 2026, the year transforms into a symbol of change. It represents the ultimate fork in the road. On one side lies the global collapse of the systems that defined the last century. On the other is the possibility of a harsh new era, a period of struggle leading to a restructuring of civilization. This era may be defined by scarcity, yet it might also be the crucible in which a resilient humanity is forged. The year 2026 is where the momentum of the past finally meets the resistance of the future. We are no longer waiting for change. We are inside its inception. The mystery of time is the greatest secret Vanga left behind. While we wait for the calendar to turn, we must realize the pieces are already moving. The regional skirmishes and social divides are not isolated incidents. They are gears of a massive machine. When you watch the news, look beyond politics. See events through the lens of a history not yet written, but whose outlines were sketched by a blind woman decades ago. It is a story of transition, where every headline is a word in a sentence we are finishing. We are the architects and the audience of this grand, tragic and hopeful play. There is a final, lingering thought. Some claim her most terrifying secrets were never recorded, and her last words were a whisper meant only for the few. She spoke of a golden age following the darkness, but cautioned the price would be higher than imagined. As the clock ticks toward 2026, we wonder if the secrets she kept were not meant to protect us, but to protect the future from us. The silence of the prophetess remains, but her warnings grow louder, leaving us to wonder if we are now truly ready for what the inner eye saw coming from the very beginning. The shadows are lengthening, and the stage is finally set.